They were good to you. Genuinely, consistently, without agenda. Good to you. They showed up. They stayed when staying was inconvenient. They asked the real questions and waited for the real answers. They offered something that is genuinely rare in this world. Themselves. Fully. Without conditions. And something happened. Not dramatically, not in one decisive moment you could point to and explain, but gradually, almost imperceptibly, you made it harder for them to stay. A coldness that arrived without warning. A withdrawal that had no real cause. A distance that you created with such quiet efficiency that by the time they noticed, you were already somewhere they couldn't quite reach. And they left. Or they stayed but stopped trying to reach, which amounts to the same thing. Pause, long enough to feel. You've told yourself different stories about this, that they weren't right for you, that the timing was off, that they would have left eventually anyway. But underneath every version of that story, a quieter, more honest one, that you needed them, and you pushed them away anyway. Welcome to Thought Paradox. Today we are talking about one of the most painful and least examined patterns a person can carry. Not the fear of being hurt by the wrong people, the fear of being helped by the right ones. Here is the central paradox of this pattern. The people most likely to be pushed away are not the ones who treat you poorly. Poor treatment activates a different response, sometimes staying, sometimes fighting, sometimes the complicated dynamics we have explored in other videos. The people most likely to be pushed away are the ones who treat you well, the consistent ones, the available ones, the ones who see something in you worth staying for and have decided, quietly, without fanfare, that they are going to stay. Those are the people the pushing away mechanism targets with the most precision. And understanding why requires understanding what genuine care actually triggers in a nervous system that learned, somewhere along the way, that care is dangerous. Not dangerous in the obvious sense, not dangerous like cruelty is dangerous. Dangerous in a more specific way. Dangerous because if you let it in, if you allow yourself to actually need it, to rely on it, to build something around the assumption that it will continue, then you have something to lose. And the nervous system that has lost enough, that has learned through real experience that things you count on disappear, that nervous system would rather push the thing away on its own terms than wait for it to leave. Because it doesn't always look like pushing. From the outside, sometimes even from the inside, it looks like something else entirely. It looks like independence. You don't need help. You handle things yourself. When someone offers support, you deflect it gracefully. You're fine, you've got it. You appreciate the offer, but there's really no need. This looks like strength. It presents as self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency is a virtue, when it comes from genuine capability, rather than from the terror of being dependent on someone who might not stay. The difference between the two is almost invisible from the outside. From the inside, only you know which one it actually is. It looks like privacy. You are selective about what you share. You keep certain things back. You have a version of yourself that's available to most people, and a deeper version that very few have ever seen. This looks like wisdom, like appropriate boundaries, like the reasonable caution of someone who has learned that not everyone deserves access to all of you. And sometimes it is exactly that. But sometimes, particularly with the people who have earned more access, who have demonstrated through consistent action that they can hold the real version of you, the privacy is not caution. It is a wall, maintained not because they haven't proven themselves, but because letting them past it would mean actually needing them. It looks like testing. You behave in ways that create friction, not consciously sabotaging,
just introducing enough difficulty to see whether they'll stay. And when they do stay, when they navigate the friction with patience and care and genuine commitment to being there, instead of relaxing into the evidence that they can be trusted, you escalate the test. Because the real test is not whether they'll stay through difficulty. The real test, the one the nervous system is actually running, is whether there is any amount of your realness they will eventually find to be too much. And no amount of staying answers that question permanently. Because the question isn't really about them. It looks like busyness. You are genuinely busy. The people who love you understand that. But there is a specific kind of busyness. The busyness that arrives precisely when someone is trying to get close. That fills every available space in your schedule at exactly the moments when genuine connection might have been possible. That busyness is not circumstantial. It is a management strategy. Keeping the calendar full enough that intimacy never has an opening.
Nobody learns to push away the people they need without reason. The reason is almost always some version of the same experience. You needed someone. You showed it. And they were not there. Not in the way you needed. Not when you needed it most. Not in a way that made the need feel safe to have again. For some people, this happened once, dramatically. A loss, a betrayal. A moment where the person they counted on most revealed themselves to be unavailable in a way that restructured everything after it. The lesson arrived fully formed in a single experience. Needing people is how you get hurt. For others, it was slower, a pattern of reaching out and finding the response insufficient, of showing something real and having it received without the care it required, of learning through accumulated small disappointments that the full expression of need tends to produce one of several uncomfortable outcomes: discomfort, distance, being told, directly or through behavior, that they were too much. And so they became less. They learned to need quietly, to feel things privately, to present a version of themselves manageable enough to be maintained by the people around them. And in doing so, in successfully reducing themselves to a size that others could handle, they also reduced their access to the one thing that would have helped: real support from real people who had been given the real version to support. There is also a specific dynamic that develops in families where emotional needs were consistently minimized, where the message, spoken or unspoken, was that needs were burdensome, that self-sufficiency was the highest virtue, that asking for help was weakness, and receiving it was dependence. People who grew up in that environment don't just struggle to receive help. They have a physical reaction to it, something that feels almost like shame. When someone offers genuine care, when they ask the real question, or show up without being asked, or demonstrate through some quiet action that they've been paying attention to what you actually need, instead of relief, there is discomfort, a sense of exposure, of debt, of something that needs to be immediately repaid or deflected. Because need, in the environment where they learned the rules, was not safe to have, and being seen having it is not safe either.
The cost is not dramatic. It arrives gradually, the way most important losses do. It costs you the people themselves. Not always immediately. Some stay for years, showing up with a patience that is genuinely remarkable. But eventually, not out of cruelty, not out of failure of love, the reaching stops. Not because they stopped caring, because caring towards someone who consistently deflects is one of the most exhausting things a person can sustain. And at some point, most people redirect that care towards somewhere it can actually land. It costs you the experience of being known. Because being known requires being seen, and being seen requires allowing someone close enough to actually look. The person who pushes away the people who love them can be surrounded by people for an entire lifetime and still carry, in the deepest part of themselves, the particular loneliness of never having been fully witnessed, of having performed connection in every room they entered without ever quite entering one of their own. It costs you the resource of genuine support at the moments it matters most. The crisis that arrives, and crises always arrive, finds a person who has systematically reduced their network of real support to a point where there is almost no one close enough to call. Not because they are unlikable, not because they have been unkind, because they spent years ensuring that no one got close enough to become genuinely necessary. And now, they are genuinely, practically alone in something that needed company. Let's be honest about what actually changes this. Not insight alone, not the decision to be different, not the recognition, however accurate, that the pattern is costing you something real. Those things are necessary. They are not sufficient. What changes it is practice. Specific, uncomfortable, chosen practice. The first practice is letting something land. When someone does something caring, when they notice what you needed without being asked, when they show up in a way that costs them something, when they offer something real, instead of deflecting, instead of minimizing, instead of the rapid reciprocation that neutralizes the gift before you have to feel it, let it land. Stay in the discomfort of having been cared for. Let the receipt of it be complete before you do anything else. This sounds small. It is not small. For a nervous system that has built sophisticated architecture against exactly this experience, letting a moment of genuine care arrive and be felt is an act of real courage. The second practice is asking for something, not something large, not a test of depth, something small and real, something you actually need and would not normally ask for, and then watching what happens when you ask. For most people who push others away, the asking itself is the breakthrough. Not because the response is always perfect, but because the asking proves that need, expressed directly, does not automatically produce the outcome the nervous system has been protecting against. That evidence, gathered one small ask at a time, begins to revise the rule. The third practice is telling someone where you actually are. Not the managed version, not the fine version, not the version that keeps the relationship at the comfortable surface level where nothing can really reach you. The actual version, where you are today, what is hard, what you are carrying. Not as a performance of vulnerability, not to test them, just because it's true, and they asked, and you decided this time to answer honestly. What happens in the moment after that honesty is the most important data your nervous system has ever collected.
The people you pushed away, most of them did not leave because of who you are. They left because the version of you that was available to them was not the version that needed what they had to offer. And what they had to offer was real. You are not someone who doesn't need people. The pushing away is proof of the opposite. You only push away what has the potential to matter. You only create distance from the people who could get close enough to actually reach you. The mechanism is not indifference. It is the most elaborate form of caring about something so much that you would rather destroy it yourself than watch it leave. The question is not whether you need the people you push away. You do. You always did. The question is whether you are willing to practice, slowly, imperfectly, one small moment of letting something land at a time, allowing them to stay. Not because the risk has disappeared, not because you've healed everything that made the pushing feel necessary, but because the cost of the distance, the particular, quiet, accumulating cost of being alone in every room you enter, has finally become more than the cost of letting someone in. You are allowed to need people.
You are allowed to show it. You are allowed to receive what the right ones are offering without immediately finding a reason to give it back. I'm Thought Paradox. If this named something you've been doing for longer than you'd like, share it with someone who needed to hear it. See you in the next one.